Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to absolute silence. No birds singing, no dogs barking, no sound of wind. Just everyone you love, dead in their beds. On August 21st, 1986, this exact nightmare became real. It happened to a group of peaceful villages in the remote mountains of Cameroon. They went to sleep beside a lake, one of the most beautiful lakes in Africa. The water was crystal clear, the night was perfectly calm. But what if I told you a dark secret? Beneath that beautiful surface, a silent monster was waking up, and it had been growing for hundreds of years. By sunrise, more than 1,700 people were gone. Not because of a war, not because of a volcano, not even because of a flood, but because of something they couldn't see, something they couldn't hear, and something they couldn't escape. To understand how a peaceful lake can turn into a weapon of mass destruction, we have to look closer at the map. This is Lake Nyos. It sits high up in the volcanic mountains of northwest Cameroon. It is cradled inside the crater of an old, inactive volcano. From above, it looks like paradise, a deep blue mirror hidden between lush green hills. For generations, families lived here. They built their lives around this water. They fished in it. They farmed the fertile soil nearby. They raised their children on its shores. It wasn't just a lake, it was their home. But deep below the surface, the earth was playing a terrifying game. You see, miles beneath the lakebed, pockets of ancient magma were still active, and this magma was constantly leaking a deadly gas, carbon dioxide. Slowly, molecule by molecule, the gas seeped through the cracks of the earth. It entered the absolute bottom of the lake, year after year, decade after decade. But why didn't the gas just bubble up to the surface and float away safely? Well, that's where the trap was set. Normally, lakes mix. Cold water sinks, warm water rises. The layers cycle naturally with the weather. But Lake Nyos was different. It was what scientists call a meromictic lake, one of the rarest lake types on Earth. Because the water at the bottom was so incredibly heavy, dense, and cold, it acted like a massive, liquid lid. It kept the gas trapped under immense pressure. Think of it like a giant 200-meter-deep bottle of soda. The cap was screwed on tight, and the Earth just kept injecting gas, shaking the bottle. The people living on the shores had absolutely no idea. They were sleeping on top of a ticking natural bomb. And the worst part? Nature had already given humanity a warning. 2 years before the disaster, the bomb almost went off nearby. In 1984, just a short distance away, another volcanic lake called Lake Nyos suddenly cracked open. 37 people died in an instant. But look at how it happened. There was no massive explosion, no fire, no giant waves, just people walking down a road and suddenly collapsing. When doctors arrived, they were completely baffled. The bodies had no wounds, no signs of struggle. It looked as if they had simply forgotten how to breathe. At first, panic spread through the region. Remember, this was the height of the Cold War. Rumors exploded. Was it a secret chemical weapon attack? Was it a foreign government testing a new gas? Was it a tribal curse? Eventually, a few brave scientists uncovered the truth. The lake had released a massive cloud of carbon dioxide. It was a wake-up call for the scientific world. It proved that these lakes weren't just water. They were suffocating traps. But the warning was buried in obscure scientific papers. The world moved on. The governments did nothing. And only 24 months later, the exact same phenomenon would happen again. Except this time, the scale would be catastrophic. It's August 21st, 1986, 9:30 at night. The sun has long set over Lake Nyos. Families are finishing their dinner. Children are tucked into bed. Everything feels perfectly normal. But then, a strange, low rumbling sound echoes through the valley. Deep underwater, the delicate balance finally snaps. To this day, scientists still debate what triggered it. Was it a small landslide on the crater wall, a rockfall, or perhaps a tiny volcanic tremor? Whatever it was, it broke the liquid lid. The heavy water at the bottom rushed to the top, and just like opening a warm bottle of champagne, the pressure disappeared. The gas exploded out of the water. A massive column of water and foam shot 100 meters into the air. A small tsunami crashed against the shores. But the water wasn't the killer. 100,000 tons of pure, concentrated carbon dioxide burst into the night sky. Now, here is the crucial physics part that changed everything. Carbon dioxide is much heavier than normal air, so it didn't rise into the sky. Instead, it fell. It formed a massive, blanketing cloud, nearly 50 meters thick, and it began to roll down the hillsides like a silent, invisible river of death. It moved at nearly 50 miles per hour, pouring into the valleys. It slipped through the cracks of doors. It crept through open windows. There was no smell, no smoke, no warning. People didn't even have time to realize they were dying. As they breathed in, the invisible gas completely replaced the oxygen in their lungs. Within minutes, entire villages were wiped out. People died while talking. People died while sleeping. By the time the sun rose, the cloud had dissolved into the atmosphere, but the world it left behind was unrecognizable. When the sun finally came up on August 22nd, the valley looked completely untouched. The houses were standing. The trees were green, the crops were perfectly fine, but there was a terrifying, suffocating silence. One survivor, a man named Joseph Ngin, woke up after being unconscious for over 24 hours. When he opened his eyes, he thought he was in a dream. He looked around his house. His family wouldn't move. He walked out into the street. Everywhere he looked, bodies. Neighbors lying on the grass, cattle collapsed in the fields. Even the birds and the flies were dead on the ground. He thought a nuclear war had broken out. He walked for miles, searching for a single sign of life. But there was none. More than 1,700 people lost their lives that night. Over 3,000 livestock wiped out in hours. And this is what haunts investigators to this day: the utter lack of physical destruction. Nature didn't break a single window. It didn't burn a single roof. It just erased the life. So, how do you stop a lake from killing again? Once scientists realized this was a limnic eruption, a rare but real planetary phenomenon, they knew they were racing against the clock. Because the magma beneath Lake Nyos hadn't stopped working, the carbon dioxide was already building back up at the bottom. The bomb was reloading. If they did nothing, the disaster would repeat itself. But fixing it was incredibly dangerous. If scientists disturbed the water too much while trying to fix it, they could accidentally trigger another massive eruption. But the solution they came up with was beautifully simple. In 2001, a team of international engineers took the risk. They installed a massive plastic pipe. It stretched all the way down to the dark bottom of the lake. They started a pump, pulling the gas-heavy water upward. And then, something amazing happened. As the water rose and the pressure dropped, the gas naturally separated. It shot out of the top of the pipe like a permanent, harmless fountain. It acted like a safety valve on a pressure cooker. Instead of letting the pressure build up for another massive explosion, the pipe allowed the lake to slowly breathe, releasing the gas out into the atmosphere in tiny, safe amounts. Today, Lake Nyos is closely monitored by automated systems. The immediate danger here has finally been neutralized. But the mystery of Lake Nyos changed science forever. It proved that danger doesn't always come with fire, ash, or screaming sirens. Sometimes, it arrives in absolute silence, as if the world held its breath. But here is the twist that keeps geologists awake at night. Lake Nyos is small. It's less than 2 kilometers wide, but thousands of kilometers away, on the border between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, sits another meromictic lake, Lake Kivu. Lake Kivu is not 2 kilometers wide. It is 2,000 times larger than Lake Nyos. And it isn't just trapping carbon dioxide. Deep in its depths, it is also trapping massive amounts of highly flammable methane gas. And the terrifying part? More than 2 million people live right on its shores. If Lake Kivu ever suffers a limnic eruption, it wouldn't just suffocate millions. A single spark could turn the entire region into a massive, fiery explosion. Scientists are desperately working to monitor Lake Kivu because they know the stakes are unimaginably high. History has already shown us what happens when our planet keeps a secret for too long. Lake Nyos wasn't a curse. It wasn't an act of malice. It was a fascinating, terrifying reminder that our Earth is constantly active, even when the water looks perfectly calm. Because sometimes, the places that look the safest are the ones you should fear the most. This is Hidden Dimensions.